Viewer discretion is advised. What you're about to hear is more than entertainment. It's a clash of worlds. This is the day country superstar Blake Shelton stepped onto The View expecting a routine morning interview, and instead walked straight into one of the most explosive on-air confrontations daytime TV has ever seen. The morning started with the usual polished calm. Studio lights blazed, the audience buzzed with excitement, and the hosts took their seats. Before we begin, tell us where are you watching from, also subscribe. Blake was there to promote his new album and upcoming tour. Nothing controversial, nothing complicated. His publicist had promised softballs, smiles, and a few laughs. Easy. Blake entered with that familiar Oklahoma confidence. Hat tipped, grin shining, posture relaxed like he owned the room. The audience loved him instantly. Whoopi welcomed him warmly. Sarah practically glowed with excitement. And even Sonny offered a genuine smile. Everything was exactly as expected. But then there was Joy Behar. Joy sat back quietly, watching Blake with a look longtime viewers recognized. The look she wore right before she launched an ambush. A sharp, knowing smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. The kind of smile that never meant anything good for the guest sitting across from her. The interview began smoothly. Blake talked about his album, The Voice, life in Nashville. He joked, the audience laughed, and the other hosts nodded along. It was textbook morning television. Until it wasn't. Joy leaned forward, her voice slicing through the comfortable mood. Well, 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 look who finally decided to grace us with his presence, she said, her smile widening like a trap snapping shut. Blake Shelton, the so-called voice of rural America, or should I say, a very specific kind of rural America. Blake kept smiling, but his eyes sharpened. Good morning to you too, Joy, he replied, friendly but cautious. Always a pleasure to be here with you, ladies. Oh, cut the charm, Blake, Joy shot back. Let's talk about your recent comments on small town values. You act like people from small towns are somehow more moral or patriotic than the rest of us city folks. The studio temperature dropped. The audience fell silent. Whoopi attempted a gentle redirect. Joy, maybe we should... But Joy wasn't letting go. She pressed on, voice rising with challenge. Do you really believe you're better than everyone who doesn't live like you? That your America is the only real America? The tension was thick enough to choke on. Blake leaned back, slightly calculating. He could have dodged. He could have softened, but he didn't. Instead, he lifted his chin and looked Joy directly in the eyes. You know, Joy, he said slowly, I talk about small town values because I lived them. Hard work, respect, taking care of your neighbors instead of screaming at them. It's not about being better. It's about remembering what built this country in the first place. A murmur rolled through the studio. And if that bothers you, Blake added, maybe you should ask yourself why. Joy blinked, momentarily stunned. The audience gasped. Even the other hosts froze. Blake continued, voice steady but firm. I didn't come here to fight with you. I came here to talk music. But if you're going to twist my words for ratings, at least admit that's what you're doing. Chaos erupted. The audience was divided. Some clapped, others booed, but everyone was electrified. Joy opened her mouth to fire back, but no words came. For the first time in a long time, Joy Behar was speechless. Blake sat there calm, collected, unmoved. What happened that day wasn't just a celebrity spat. It was a cultural flashpoint, a moment when two Americas collided live on air, and Blake Shelton, the country boy from Oklahoma, didn't flinch. He didn't apologize. He didn't bend. He stood his ground, and daytime television has never forgotten it. The studio was frozen, suspended between shock and fascination, as Blake Shelton sat there with the calm steadiness of someone who had finally stopped pretending. Joy Behar, still reeling from his unexpected pushback, leaned back in her chair as if physically struck by his words. For a brief moment, she wasn't the confident interrogator. She was the one on defense. Whoopi jumped in like a lifeguard diving into choppy water. All right, everyone take a breath, she said with a strained smile. We're all friends here. Blake, you know how this table gets sometimes. Joy gets passionate, that's all. But the tension wasn't that simple. Everyone could feel it. Joy lifted her hand slowly, regaining her footing. Passionate? She said, her voice steadying. I'm passionate because people like Blake preach about values while ignoring the realities the rest of us live in. Blake turned his head toward her, unbothered. Joy, I'm not preaching anything. I'm speaking from experience. If that experience doesn't match yours, that's fine. But don't act like I'm trying to rewrite the Constitution because I said small towns have strong communities. Joy scoffed. Strong communities? You mean communities that all think the same way, vote the same way, refuse to change? That's not strength, that's isolation. Blake's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in resolve. And what would you call this? He asked, gesturing lightly around the table. 4 people ready to jump a guest because his values don't align with yours? The audience reacted instantly. Gasps, whispers, nervous laughter. The tension was no longer subtle, it was on full display. Sunny Hostin stepped in, folding her hands calmly. Blake, I think what Joy is trying to say is that sometimes when celebrities talk about real America, it can sound like they're dismissing everyone else. And I hear that, Blake said, but I never said city folks weren't real. I never said they weren't American. What I said, what I always say, is that where I come from, we look out for each other. We argue, but we don't tear each other down. Then came the sentence that shifted the room again. And frankly, that's something this show could learn from. It was said softly, without venom, but the impact hit like a dropped microphone. Even Whoopi had to raise her eyebrows. Joy's shoulders tightened. So now you're lecturing us on how to run our own show? No, Blake said. I'm pointing out what everyone watching already sees. This isn't an interview, it's a firing squad, and I won't sit here and pretend it's something else. The crowd erupted, some applauding, others shouting. Producers scrambled behind the cameras, waving frantic signals to keep things under control. The View had seen heated arguments before, but never one where the guest held the power. Joy inhaled sharply, gathering her will for one final strike. Blake, you built a career appealing to people who want simple answers to complicated problems. Don't come here and pretend you've got moral authority. Blake didn't blink. I don't pretend anything. I live what I talk about, and if speaking plainly is a problem, maybe the real issue is that too many people in this business forgot how to do that. The table went silent. It wasn't just what he said, it was the conviction behind it. Blake wasn't shouting, he wasn't angry, he wasn't flustered, he was simply done. Sarah Haynes spoke next, her voice softer. Blake, I think some of this is just miscommunication. We admire you, we really do. Blake nodded politely. I appreciate that, Sarah, and I admire all of you too, but admiration doesn't mean you let people take shots at you without pushing back. The room seemed to exhale as if everyone had been holding their breath. Then Blake added, I'm not here to change anyone's mind. I'm here to be honest about who I am. If that's controversial, that's not my problem. The producers finally cut to a commercial break and the studio lights dimmed. The moment the cameras powered down, the hosts loosened in their chairs. Joy leaned back with a long exhale. Whoopi rubbed her temples. Sarah tried to smile through the awkwardness, and Sunny whispered something to a nearby producer. Blake stood up slowly, adjusting his jacket. A stagehand handed him a bottle of water, but he barely noticed. He was already somewhere else, mentally stepping out of the arena he didn't sign up to fight in. A few audience members reached out to shake his hand. Some applauded quietly, others simply watched him with wide, fascinated eyes as he walked toward the wings. Joy finally spoke, her voice subdued. Blake, for what it's worth, not many people hold their own at this table. Blake paused, turned, and gave her a nod that carried neither bitterness nor victory, just truth. Joy, he said, I don't come here to fight, but I don't run from one either. And with that, he left the stage. The moment he did, the view wasn't the same. The audience wasn't the same. The country wasn't the same, because in the space of a few minutes, a line had been drawn, and Blake Shelton had walked straight across it without blinking. When the show returned from commercial break, the atmosphere in the studio was noticeably different. The tension that had crackled moments earlier now hung in the air like a storm that had passed, but not entirely. The studio lights brightened, the audience tried to settle, and the hosts straightened in their chairs, each wearing a carefully constructed expression of televised calm. But Blake Shelton was no longer sitting at the table. During the break, producers had quietly suggested that the interview segment wrap early due to timing issues. Everyone knew the truth. The moment had become bigger than the show itself, and the safest move was to cut it short. Still, the view had to continue. Whoopi cleared her throat as the cameras rolled again. Welcome back, she said, forcing a smile. That was quite a conversation with Blake Shelton. We appreciate passionate discussions at this table. It's part of what makes this show what it is. Her voice carried professionalism, but underneath it was a tone seasoned viewers recognized. A plea for calm. Joy Behar, for the first time all morning, looked unsettled, not embarrassed, not defeated, just thoughtful. She fiddled with the papers in front of her, glancing toward the empty guest seat, then toward the audience. Sunny Hostin broke the silence first. "Look, disagreements happen," she said. "This show is built on them, and Blake had every right to defend his perspective." Joy finally spoke, softer than usual. "Yeah, well, he sure did that." Some audience members chuckled. Others shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether they were supposed to laugh. Sarah tried to lighten the mood. "Maybe next time we'll stick to asking about tour dates." The crowd laughed, genuinely this time, but the shadow of the moment lingered. What no one realized then was that this interview, this clash, was not going to stay inside the studio walls. The microphones were off, but the battle was only beginning. Behind the scenes backstage, Blake stood with his publicist, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "You okay?" she asked gently. He shrugged. "I've been in bar fights less intense than that." She winced. "They blindsided you. If I'd known Joy planned to go after you." "She didn't blindside me," Blake interrupted. "She challenged me. That's fine, but I'm not gonna sit there and let someone paint me as something I'm not." A stage manager approached cautiously. "Blake, the car is ready whenever you are. And, great job out there." Blake gave a small, grateful nod, though he knew "great job" was a code for "you just created a firestorm." On his way out, a few crew members whispered encouragements. Some avoided eye contact. All of them felt the aftershocks. Meanwhile, on set back at the table, the hosts transitioned to the next scheduled segment, a lifestyle piece about fall recipes. But the mood was still tense. Joy's thoughts clearly lingered on the confrontation. She kept glancing toward the wings, where Blake had disappeared moments earlier. During a brief pause, Joy leaned toward Whoopi and whispered, "Did I go too hard?" Whoopi sighed. "Joy, you went Joy." "I wasn't trying to attack him," Joy muttered. "Maybe not," Whoopi said, "but you sure didn't give him a soft landing." Joy looked down. For once, she had nothing witty to say. Within minutes, the internet erupted clips hit social media before the show even ended. Viewers posted shaky cell phone videos from the audience. Others cut excerpts from the live stream, highlighting the exact moment Blake turned the tables. He finally said what every guest wants to say. Joy got checked hard. Blake Shelton just became a legend. She was asking fair questions. He overreacted. He's promoting small-town superiority. Cable news networks replayed the confrontation within hours. Entertainment sites wrote headlines like, "The moment had become a cultural battlefield." Blake's response: later that evening, Blake finally broke his silence. He posted a short message to his followers. "I'll always be honest about who I am, even if it makes people uncomfortable. Thanks for the support today." No names, no insults, no backtracking. Just Blake being Blake. His comment section exploded with thousands of responses in minutes. Joy's reaction. Joy Behar addressed the situation on the next day's episode of The View. As the show opened, she adjusted her glasses, looked into the camera, and said, "Yesterday was intense. Blake Shelton and I had a heated exchange. Happens on this show. I stand by my questions, and he stood by his answers. That's America." No apology, but no bitterness either. It was the closest Joy Behar ever came to calling something a draw. The aftermath. The interview went down in television history as one of the most unforgettable confrontations ever aired on The View. Producers whispered about it for months. Fans debated it for years. But one thing was certain: Blake Shelton didn't bend. He didn't retreat. He walked into the lion's den and walked out standing tall. In the days that followed, the confrontation between Blake Shelton and Joy Behar grew far beyond a morning TV scuffle. It became the conversation dominating media, talk radio, and social feeds across the country. What happened on that stage was no longer just entertainment. It was a mirror held up to a divided America, reflecting every tension simmering beneath the surface. By the next morning, the clash had become headline news. Major networks hosted panels dissecting every second of the exchange. Conservative outlets praised Blake for standing up to what they called Hollywood elitism. Liberal outlets defended Joy, arguing that she had simply challenged a celebrity's public narrative. The moment had been captured on dozens of microphones, but the real battle was happening through screens and keyboards. Commentators debated the meaning of small-town values, using Blake's words as ammunition on both sides. Was he calling for unity, nostalgia, a return to simpler times, or was he, as critics insisted, drawing a line between good Americans and everyone else? Blake hadn't intended to spark a culture war, but he had. Inside the country music world back in Nashville, Blake's fellow artists watched the saga unfold with mixed reactions. Country traditionalists applauded him. Blake said what needed to be said, one veteran singer commented. We're tired of being treated like hillbillies. Younger, pop-oriented artists were more cautious. I get where he was coming from, one said, but the industry's changing. You gotta be careful. Record executives, meanwhile, saw something else entirely. Numbers. Sales for Blake's new album jumped. Streams surged. His tour ticket searches spiked overnight. One executive reportedly said, Blake didn't just survive that interview, he turned it into rocket fuel. Joy's day after, at the View studio, Joy Behar was dealing with her own fallout. Producers told her the clip had reached over 20 million views in less than 24 hours. Joy, never one to shy away from controversy, took it in stride, but even she admitted privately that Blake's calm, direct pushback had surprised her. During a commercial break the next day, she leaned over to Whoopi and muttered, I've gone head-to-head with a lot of people at this table, but that cowboy didn't budge. Whoopi smirked. Joy, you poked a bear, except this one wears boots. Joy sighed. Well, at least he didn't throw a chair. Even she laughed at that, but despite the humor, Joy knew the moment had struck a nerve far beyond the studio. Whether she liked it or not, Blake had matched her energy, and millions admired him for it. Blake at home. While the media spun their narratives, Blake retreated to the one place he felt grounded, his ranch in Oklahoma. He spent the evening sitting on his porch with a guitar in his hands, watching the sun slide down behind the tree line. The quiet was a sharp contrast to the noise consuming the internet. Gwen joined him outside, handing him a cold drink before sitting beside him. You didn't do anything wrong, she said softly. Blake shrugged. I wasn't trying to start something. You didn't, Gwen said. They did. You just didn't back down. Blake chuckled. Joy Behar is tougher than most interviewers I've dealt with. Gwen nudged him playfully. Well, she met her match. He strummed a slow chord on his guitar. I just told the truth, that's all. Gwen rested her head on his shoulder, and that's why people love you. The fan response grows over the next week. The debate intensified. Clips of Blake's small-town values speech began circulating with inspirational music behind them. TikTok users made edits showing Main Street America, farms, and veterans, while Blake's voice played over the visuals. Meanwhile, critics dissected Joy's questions, calling them unfair or overly combative. Others argued she was doing her job. The View's message board nearly crashed from the flood of comments. Some viewers demanded Joy apologize. Others said Blake owed the hosts respect. The arguments became so heated that moderators had to lock entire threads. It no longer mattered what Joy meant or what Blake intended. The moment had grown into something symbolic. The turning point. Then, 1 week after the infamous interview, Blake made a surprise announcement during a radio appearance. The host asked politely, Blake, would you ever return to The View after what happened? Blake paused, smiled to himself, and responded, sure I would. I don't run from tough conversations, but next time I'm bringing biscuits for everyone at the table. Maybe that'll calm things down. The internet exploded. Even Joy had to laugh when she heard it live. On the next episode of The View, Whoopi held up her phone and played the clip. The audience roared with laughter. Joy threw her hands up theatrically. Fine, if he comes back, I'll bring the gravy. It was the closest thing to reconciliation anyone had expected. The legacy of the clash, and over time, the confrontation settled into TV history. Not as a scandal, but as a moment of honesty. A rare instance where a celebrity didn't hide behind PR gloss, and a host didn't soften her edge. Two strong personalities, two different worlds, one unforgettable collision. No scripts, no handlers, no filters. Just raw, unvarnished America laid bare on a morning talk show couch. Blake Shelton didn't just survive it, he owned it, and Joy Behar, for all her fire, respected that more than she'd ever admit aloud. If you like this video, then subscribe.